Hello folks, Pipe Man 1861 here. Well, as last week, I decided, you know what, smoked Frostica 1800, not Frosty Man. I smoked Frostica 1800 last week, and I kind of felt like it again tonight, so I figured, you know, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And smoking it in my Frostica 1800 pipe. And after the way, this is the plan I have for this. After all my Frostica 1800 has finally been smoked, I will soak this pipe, because it's porcelain, I will soak it in very high test alcohol for several weeks, and hopefully all of the minty goodness will have leached out of it by then, and then I can actually smoke something else in it. But no, I hope you all have had a good week. I have. Had a marvelous week, as a matter of fact. Everything's gone very well. I can't wait. I tell you what, the thing I'm most looking forward to, I think, about this trip is showing you all the pictures from it. And I'm really hoping to be able to get video, especially of the Petersons. There's also a place, it's called the Pipe Shop. I don't know if I mentioned this. There's a place called the Pipe Shop. It's in Edinburgh, Scotland. And we're going to visit there too. So I'll try to get a video in both. Of course, they'll be on my cell phone. I'm not going to lug this camera around with me all over Europe. But I'll try to get some video and at least pictures. And I really look forward to sharing them. Not that I'm the only one who's ever shared video with Peter from Peterson, mind you, but I just thought that it would be kind of fun. Now, and just like last week, I'm using my BD Jet lighter. I tell you, I have to be kind of careful with this thing. I held it in the pipe bowl for a little too long. Porcelain started crackling a little. That's how hot that thing gets. Of course, back in the 60s, when those things were being sold 40s, 50s, and 60s, people didn't care quite as much about charring the rims of their pipes. They were more worried about getting their pipes lit reliably, and that does a fine job of that. But it can be hard on briar, so I try not to use it with briar. No. And the other thing that I can promise as well is I will be, well, I shouldn't promise it, but the first, and I know I've said this before, but the first stop we're going to make in Europe, or in London, is the Sherlock Holmes Museum. And I am very much looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. They, of course, for those of you, and if you smoke a pipe and you're not familiar with Mr. Sherlock Holmes, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. So please stop this video, go look him up, and then come back. Okay, you're all back now. So, Sherlock Holmes was, and I know every pipe guy on the internet has talked extensively about Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, etc. But he was a fictional character, regardless of what anybody tells you. But for a fictional character, he developed almost more of a life of his own than a lot of people do, real people. And of course, the character is particularly meaningful to pipe people because he was a pipe smoker. Now, he never smoked a calabash pipe. That was the work of a Mr. Gillette, who was the actor who portrayed Mr. Sherlock Holmes in many plays, the popular play in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and also in, I believe, a couple films, silent films. But he smoked a calabash pipe as Holmes in the play because he wanted to be able, everybody to be able to see his face. He wanted a bent pipe, and the calabash just happened to be what they had handy. But Holmes in the stories smoked 3 different pipes. He had a long-stemmed cherry wood pipe. He had an old, very well-used briar pipe, and he had a very, very well-used clay pipe that was black and greasy, is what it was described as in the stories. And he smoked cigarettes and occasional cigars, but those were the 3 pipes he smoked. And Mr. Holmes was a tobacco savant, if you will. He smoked incessantly. If he wasn't smoking, he was doing less desirable things. So I'm glad most of his time was taken up by the pipe and smoking. And for those of you who have not read the stories, and I happen to be one of these crazy people who have read a great many, though I've read every one of the original Sherlock Holmes stories and a great many of the later Doyle-esque stories that have been written by other authors. But there was a one story, I believe it was the Red-Headed League, if I am remembering correctly. But Holmes was confronted with a problem, as all the stories go, and he sat down and got his pipe off the mantelpiece, and Watson said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Going to smoke. It is quite a 3-pipe problem, and I beg you not to speak to me for 50 minutes. So Holmes sat in his chair, much like this, and smoked. And after almost an hour, he jumped up, put his pipe on the mantelpiece, and said, "Come on, Watson." He did not say the game is afoot. That was another Hollywoodism. But use the pipe to sit down and think a problem through. I've done that. I think we all have. But no. But anyway, in the stories, Holmes' address was 221B Baker Street, London. He rented a flat. Watson was his roommate. And they rented it from a Mrs. Hudson, who was their landlady and housekeeper. Well, 221B Baker Street was never a real address. There was, I believe it was a bank that occupied a whole row of building addresses on Baker Street, and 221 was one of them. Well, people all over the world, many of them were actually quite convinced that Sherlock Holmes was in fact a real person. So he got an immense amount of letters addressed to 221B Baker Street. Well, the bank received them because that address was a part of their block of buildings. And for many years, ever since even the 1930s, I believe, they employed one employee whose entire job was opening, reading, and answering all of their home's mail. Isn't that crazy? Well, the particular building that all the fans have really considered to be his house, quote unquote, was bought by a private group, and they lobbied to have that building be addressed specifically as 221 officially, and they actually got it done finally. The bank put up quite a fuss because they kind of felt like that was their job. They're kind of proud of that, but they people who bought the house, the townhouse, finally got it done. So now there is a 221 Baker Street. A is downstairs, B is upstairs. So they turned the house into the Sherlock Holmes Museum. They set up the upstairs, the rooms, just as Arthur Conan Doyle described them in his stories. And they give tours. So the first thing me and my wife are going to do when we get to London is go to the Sherlock Holmes Museum and take a tour. Well, they sell deerstalker caps, as Holmes wore on occasion, and now everybody, that's the hat that they consider to be Holmes's hat. So I'm going to buy one, because I have to. If I go to the Sherlock Holmes Museum, I have to get one of the deerstalker caps. So I will be wearing it in the first video I make when I come back. So I'm looking forward to that. And I don't know if they allow photographs to be taken in the museum, but I'll try. Then we're going to Kensington Palace, the Kensington Gardens. Look at the dinosaur statues left over from the Crystal Palace exhibition in 1851. That's what my wife's most excited about. She loved dinosaurs growing up, so that's going to be fun for her. And then go around London, do things there, and then we're going to go to Wales and Bath and the Isle of Wight. We're going to stay in the big house that Queen Victoria and Prince Albert had on the Isle of Wight. They rent guest rooms now, so we're going to stay there for 3 days. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then on to Dublin, to Peterson's. Drive around Ireland for a little while. And then on to Edinburgh, Scotland. Oh, and of course, after London, we're going to Downton Abbey, which the real name is Highclere Castle. We're going to go there for a tour and a lunch. It's going to be a fun trip. And as long as I don't wreck the rental car and kill anyone and end up in prison over there, I'd say it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, anyway, folks, until then, I'm going to let you all go. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful evening. This is Pipe Man 1861 saying goodbye, good luck, may the good Lord take a liking to you. I will see you all again very soon, and as always, folks, happy smoking. Thank you, folks. Bye now.